Hello, I am Tom, and this is Mark, and we are with Orange Nebula, and this is the FSF PopCast.
The show that convinced you that you maybe need to get outside more. Sorry about that. We forgot there were people out there.
Our show is brought to you by our charity sponsor, the Red Shirt Widows and Orphans Fund, which supports the Wish Upon a Teen Foundation that helps out sick kids when they need it most. And just imagine the comfort you'll give Red Shirt crewmen numbers 94 and 95. They'll know that when they put on the red shirt and join Luna on an adventure through the storms of Arrakis, that they didn't leave their family destitute and without hope, because the Red Shirt Widows and Orphans Fund has their back, and what's left of their wretched honor.
And now, a word from our show sponsor, Level Up Savory. Their link can be found in the show notes.
Well done. Well done. You brought in multiple franchises.
I like it.
I was really uncertain for a second how serious everything was. That was great.
All right, guys. So our guests today are Mark Neidlinger and Tom Matson, a couple of creative minds behind board games like Vindication and Unsettled, and a podcast called the Outpost, which you're going to want to check out as well. This is all part of the umbrella of awesomeness that is Orange Nebula. So you guys are going to find out more about them. We are super excited. Nick is excited. His face isn't showing it, but he's excited to have Mark and Tom here on the FSF PopCast. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
It's good to be here. Thanks.
All right. So, guys, one of the things that we've been doing with our show when we have guests on, because we are self-proclaimed nerds and we do love a good origin story, except for Wolverine X-Men Origins with Hugh Jackman was great. The rest of it sucked. And we still can't forgive 20th Century Fox for what they did to Deadpool. Anyway, we would love to know your guys' origin story. How did you get there from here? What were your influences in life? And unless it involves a Deadpool mouth sewing.
Mine doesn't.
No Deadpool.
There's some other mouth
just
sewing.
deadpan. Yeah.
Why don't you start?
Well, so just going back to the history of Orange Nebula, it just started with I was working in the creative industry and kind of reached a point in my life where I was a little burned out and felt like I really needed to generate some excitement in my life and find a way to channel my passion. And so in the cracks of the day, in the morning from 5 to 7, I would go to the coffee shops and I just would start designing this board game, which ended up to be Vindication. And so for 3.5 years would do this kind of routine that was pretty rigorous. I would get up, I would go to the coffee shop, I'd go to work then for the full day, I'd come home at night, I'd work on it. And I was just absolutely thrilled to be doing that, to be putting these long days in. And it was because I was just absolutely giving myself permission to do all of the things that I wanted to do without the restrictions that I had either set on myself or I felt like other people had set on me, or like, that my home life or my work life was doing. And at some point it just got, I guess, to a point where my friends and the people who were playing it said, this game is not broken and terrible anymore. It's actually pretty good. You should think about putting it on Kickstarter. And so that's kind of what I did. I didn't really know how to do that. And I talked to some folks in the industry and did some homework and at one point put it up there. And through the process of using all of my, graphic design background and storytelling background that I had done throughout my previous life, I guess, put it up on Kickstarter. And Tom was actually in the community for that Kickstarter and joined in the conversation. And I just kind of noticed through his BGG profile and through his commentary in the comments and stuff, this guy's really sharp and smart. Maybe he'd want to play test the game, because we were kind of still doing some nuanced tweaks to it, and found out that he was only living an hour away. And so we actually ended up getting together, and just kind of, it struck a chord with me how much of an intellectual giant this guy is. And I'm like, well, gosh, I could probably use some of that, because I just kind of flail around most of the day. And things kind of came out later that he was interested in doing that, and we got together, and kind of the rest is history in terms of how Tom then kind of joined our team, and we've grown it from there.
Yeah, and so when I came on, I have standard nerd background. I'm interested in all the things, and I'm particularly interested in writing. And so, but I also have a lot of systems backgrounds from my previous careers. And so when I came on, it was in the capacity of joining the branding and design agency that was still Mark's full-time job. So I joined the agency and worked the agency full-time with Mark and the other members of the agency team. And Orange Nebula was something we did in our second 40 hours a week.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
And then, over time, the scale started shifting a bit to where Orange Nebula became increasingly demanding to where Orange Nebula itself was an 80 hours a week job. And, so then sort of our role with the design agency decreased and Orange Nebula increased until eventually Orange Nebula became the full thing we were doing, at which point we then started bringing on more employees full time with Orange Nebula. And now Orange Nebula is its own thing. And the agency, which is called Blue Blazes, is its own thing. And we're kind of sister companies now. But all of my time is now Orange Nebula. Most of Mark's is now Orange Nebula.
Yep.
We're still in the same building as the agency guys. They're over there doing real work right now. And now this is what we do.
At least they're feigning to be doing real work. We're not really sure. We have to go around the corner.
Fair enough. All right. So let me ask you a secondary question based on all of that. So you guys both said that you have a bit of a nerdy background and you like the things. So if you have to pick a universe that this is my favorite, this is where I hang my hat, this is what's going to get my attention first, what is it for you?
Like, you mean like a franchise or like a
sure,
medium, or answer however the heck we want?
Yes.
Yes, all the above.
Yeah. I mean, my thing is reading. Books are my nerd love language. Comics, I'll sort of fold comics in there. I have a sort of on it, like I'll get really obsessive about comics for a couple years and then totally ignore them for a decade and then get really obsessive about them. But books are my mainstay. Classic sci-fi and fantasy in particular, but I love a lot of modern stuff too. Like I love all like the Brandon Sanderson Stormlight books. And so yeah, books are definitely my bread and butter.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a child of the 80s, and so I kind of fall into this time-worn era where it was all Star Wars and Star Trek and Marvel comics, right? And I have a deep appreciation for those. I think deeper than that, though, too, maybe the nuanced stuff that the later generations can't really connect with, which is like the older shows that used to be on back then, Land of the Lost and Buck Rogers and the original Battlestar Galactica and stuff like that. Is very nostalgic for me, even though kind of it's a little cringy to kind of watch it these days just because things have evolved so much. But there's all of those things kind of have fueled the imagination for me, and I feel very inspired by them. The nostalgia that I have for retro anything, I think, is pretty strong. And I really like the 30s and the 40s and the 50s sci-fi stuff too a lot. Even back to the 20s, even though I wasn't alive then, believe it or not, those things are really inspiring because I feel like in those eras, the fantasy and sci-fi was really like all of that stuff seems way more creative. It seems like we have so much saturation these days, and they're kind of retellings. Back in those days, the ideas were so bizarre and obscure. I'm just kind of dumbfounded and excited about all that stuff.
Well, there's freedom in not being in the mainstream. You can be as weird as you want.
Yeah.
And I think they had a lot of, like, I'm a big old movie buff. But they had, like, there was so much like technical constraint that it forced them to be creative, to do these, like, now you can just do whatever you want. But back then it was like nothing's possible. So how do you make something possible? And you have to get really weird and creative to make things happen. Yeah, that's all good stuff.
And two, I think if you go back to a lot of that older sci-fi and fantasy stuff, they had such greater hopes for the year 2000 and beyond than what has actually happened.
Yeah.
The predictions
Yeah.
versus reality,
Well, even in the 60s and 70s, I mean, you go from, the Wright brothers to being on the moon in 60 years. And then you think, what will the next 60 years bring? This is going to be incredible. And all we really achieved was like MySpace. Like it's
I'm still waiting on my
rate
jetpack.
of progress took a real dive there.
Right. Yeah. I'm still waiting on my jetpack.
Yeah, exactly.
Storytelling through board games, whether it's through artwork, flavor text, or even the mechanics of the game, are all part of what makes a game enthralling. So what piece of advice would you give to someone who wants to tell a story through a board game?
Oof.
A
big one.
Yeah, I would encourage you to, I mean, there's obviously a lot, but take advantage of the unique thing that only board games can do, which is the interactive piece and the social piece. There's when you're writing a book, it's one way. When you're making a movie, it's also one way, but with a movie, you also get to control the visual. With the book, the visual all basically exists in someone's head and they're in charge of that. With the movie or a show, you get to control the visual, but you can't control some of the unspoken things the characters are thinking. With the board game, you get to control each of those things, but you also get to give people agency in the space. And I would encourage anyone interested in board game storytelling to take advantage of that design space and give people agency in that way. And don't just, if you're using the board game medium to just tell someone a story, you're not taking advantage of the unique thing that is a board game. Just make a movie at that point. Board games allow you to do a shared storytelling thing with the player, and the players are together,
part of the story,
and they also get to interact with each other. And I would encourage taking advantage of that. Would be my standard response to that.
Many, if not most of the games that we see and play are driven by mechanics, and what people want a lot of the time is more story. My predisposition in design is to tell my own story when I'm in the game, and not everybody wants that. Is one of the things I've learned. They want to be told a story, they want to be entertained, they want to sit on the couch with the chips and watch it go. And that kind of dumbfounded me, because I originally with Vindication, I wanted the story to take place on your tableau. Like I wanted you to tell your own story, and what we ended up with was, weak theme, or, that's not kind of what this game is. This game's a Euro. It pushes cubes and that type of thing. And it's not that those things aren't true. It's just like, I think that particular demographic missed what I think the game offers. And so I kind of go into it that way. What we found with Unsettled, bringing Tom in, though, is you have an opportunity to kind of do both. And he did a really good job with Unsettled, with the narrative and the story and the written word as it's read out loud to let you know what's happening and still give players agency in the game. And so Unsettled is kind of the evolution of that idea for me.
Yeah, with the board game, you get to set the stage for them to do their thing on. And I think that the toggle is, how much of this stage are you setting? How much of a frame are you giving for the story that someone's going to tell about their own experience or what they do? And sometimes you can still, if you're trying to do a really narrative game, you can say this is going to be the end result if they succeed, but they get to tell the story of how they got there with their own creativity. And you can set the tone for, is this fun? Is this depressing? Is this intense and epic or whatever? And put them in the right mindset, but it's still ultimately the players are making their own story as they do it. Otherwise, it's I think a little bit too on rails.
I will say, every time I've played Unsettled with a new group of people, they always end up making sound effects of some sort.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
It's by design.
that is, I mean, like he says that, but that is to an extent by design. Like the goal was, let's put people in the mindset where they're going to want to do things like that. Like, let's have every action that you're taking be something that you have to read out loud, because you can't not read out loud, because it's going to be funny to read it out loud. And once you get people doing that, then you're lowering these barriers, and then people start investing themselves into it. And it's not, well, give me 2 of those blue so I can make a green. It's, I'm going to do the, hydraulic yoink, and then this thing happens. And then all of a sudden people are now in a space where they want to make sound effects.
Yoink.
And then, yeah. And then they start telling their own stories and describing the hilarious things that are happening. And it becomes less of a mechanism, even though it's still just literally a mechanism, but it's been flavored in such a way that now they want to tell their own story about what's happening. And that's kind of the magic of a board game.
It's a huge success metric too for that game. So we're really happy to hear that.
And I think too, one of the things that you guys are talking about there, it's the unlocking of the player's imagination, allowing them to, immerse themselves in that setting, in that story. Excuse me. But immersing themselves in that story so that now they're part of it. It's not just something that they're doing. They're not just rolling a dice. They're not just moving a figure across the board or whatever it may be, but now they're part of it. And I think that's to me a big thing.
There's a huge degree of trust that needs to exist between a game designer and the players, because I think it's easy to forget how much an audience brings to an experience. When I'm reading someone's book, like, I am in control of what I picture in my head. My experience with that book, even though this person is ostensibly describing to me what to see, like, my brain still sees what it sees. And a huge part of my experience is colored by what I bring to it. And with the board game, this is especially true in that, I'm bringing that to it, but also I'm bringing how well I understood the rules, how much I'm giving of my like willingness to engage like goofily or seriously, or like, so, when you're making a board game, a lot of someone's experience is on them. And our job is to set them up to where they're bringing their whole self to that experience. And it's a really weird and nuanced thing. I don't feel like I'm describing it very well, but the trust that needs to exist there is, I think, more powerful with the board game than it is with anything else.
Okay, cool.
Because like if you're watching a movie, like the person watching the movie isn't going to, accidentally forget to have the lights on and they've pointed the camera in the wrong direction. Like they can't screw that up. You can screw up playing a board game. And it's a very unique interaction between designer and community.
It's true.
20th Century Fox would challenge your ability to do it for
Touche.
I hold a little bit of a grudge, not even gonna lie, but there's a little grudge going on here. But all right, back to the topic on hand. All right, so you guys are kind of talking about this now. We talked about your backstory earlier, and you guys have both mentioned some of the things that inspire you. But now, I grew up in an era and around a bunch of guys that did not play board games, and they had no interest in it whatsoever. And if they did play a board game, it was Monopoly, and that got old and tired real quick. And then recently, in fact, on our show, the second Monday of every month, we've started doing an RPG. So we're doing that live on, and that's the first time I've ever played anything like that. So for a guy like me coming from the outside nethers of the board game community, which of your games would you recommend for a guy like me who's just starting to get into these things and enjoying them, but wants to get in and kind of sink his teeth into it?
You're talking about new to gaming in general, new to board games.
Yeah, I am. I'm a rookie.
And which of our games is that? That's
Sure.
the question.
Yeah. Which of your games, and if there's one that you think that is not your game that should be played, but Nick was pretty adamantly pointing at something.
Yeah, I mean, both of the games that we've released are fairly intensive in terms of learning curve and strategy. So I wouldn't necessarily call them gateway games for a new gamer. However, if you're going to be playing with others, Unsettled would probably be the first step, because it's cooperative. So you can collaborate with other players and you're on the same team. And in that type of an environment, you can learn and kind of be carried by people who have played games more than you have. Whereas Vindication is more of a competitive environment, even though it doesn't have to be overly competitive, and there is, a solo mode for it. I think you're gonna learn differently, and I think you're gonna, that's kind of like throwing yourself into the deep end with Vindication, whereas with Unsettled, you might have the opportunity to land a little more softly, just simply because you're all working on the same team and not viciously against each other.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I don't think they want to carry them any more than they already do through the RPG. They're pretty sure their backs are hurting, but we're learning our way through a few things. But okay. So yeah, I'm looking into getting into some different games, and just because I've enjoyed the experience over here, I'm hoping that it kind of translates over here, and we kind of.
What are you guys playing?
We're playing a Star Wars based RPG, kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons, but with Star Wars.
That's
So
awesome. I listened to some Star Wars RPG podcast a while back. That's probably what it is. I'm trying to remember what it's called. This is bad content. I'm sorry.
that's
I once
okay.
listened to a thing, but I can't remember what it is.
It's okay. I once watched a thing or read a thing, and I never remember what they are, so it's completely fine. So completely understandable. Yeah, we
dreamed it.
probably. But yeah, we've been doing that now this upcoming Monday will be our third episode. And so far my characters survived 2 episodes. John, our producer, editor, and game master, hasn't killed me yet. I think he's tried. But
Nice. Have you had to like hide behind other people and get them killed in order to make it this far?
honestly,
Like, is it
nobody's
shameful that you're still alive? Like, do you carry
No,
guilt?
You don't have
I
to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than your friends. Is that
Yeah.
where it's at?
No, honestly, Nick. So we're all Star Wars characters in the game, clearly, but Nick plays a Gungan from episode 1, that era, and we haven't had to hide because the idiot Gungan just kind of runs out in front of everybody and somehow pulls a rabbit out of his back pocket, and has saved us a couple times with these.
The whole thing has just been trade negotiations so far.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's right.
Bad trade negotiations, but yes.
Just
So.
debating currency and what's the conversion rate between different galactic credits.
Wasn't there actually, I think in episode 1, I think we actually had a discussion about that, if there were galactic credits or republic credits and which one was better to have. So yeah,
There you go.
that may have come up.
Good for you guys.
Because what doesn't attract listeners like nuance about make believe currencies. So
Like fake economies. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
So we asked around on a couple different Facebook board game type pages, and if they had any questions for Orange Nebula. The absolute number one question, you could probably guess it, was about Spiritfire.
Never heard of it.
And a lot of people are excited for Spiritfire. Granted, with Ronak, causing ruckus around the office, it probably is difficult to get things done. So could you tell our audience a little bit about what Spiritfire is? And if you have any new developments, you're welcome to share those too.
Well, I'll premise this by saying we have learned the hard way to not talk too much about what we develop, because we get our feet held to the fire later for not delivering on the ideas that we had originally as they evolve. So we've become a little bit more gun shy about it. I will say we're like a year and a half in on it, and we have a lot of firepower working on it, and it is going to be a breathtaking experience, and it's going to be different than I think any game anybody's ever seen. And I don't know how to say that more clearly, other than I'm not saying it's going to be groundbreaking. What I'm saying is it's going to be dramatically different than every other board game. It still is going to feel like a board game, but it is going to be our attempt at the deepest, richest kind of character development adventure story that you can get with. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think so. Here's the deal, FSF PopCast listeners. Like, we'll talk about this for a second, but please don't fall in love with the idea in your head, because it's almost certainly not that, and we don't want you to be heartbroken later and hate us and send us weird death threats and things that are like major overcompensations for what's going on, because those things happen, and it's sad for
They really do.
everyone involved. And so let's not do that. That being said, let's do talk about Spiritfire for a second. So if you're familiar with Unsettled, we have this sort of gameplay system where you have these different planet packs that plug into this core framework and sort of change the game. They're almost like their own standalone game that runs on the framework, if that makes sense. We have something vaguely similar happening with Spiritfire, where the main box basically is just you, and you, the character, the person. And then there are different realms that you can go to. And when you go to these realms, the realm is sort of a living, breathing place where these stories are happening. A thing is going on in the realm. There are people you can talk to, and intrigue and mysteries, and the realm exists as its own narrative thing. You as a person can choose to engage with whatever piece of that you want. So you don't necessarily go to this realm and I'm now going to play through realm A, and you play through the narrative of realm A. It's more like, it's a weird example that's not. So one of the things I really like about the video game The Witcher 3 is all this stuff is happening in the world of The Witcher 3, and you aren't necessarily at the center of any of it. You just are there, and you can involve yourself to different degrees in the things that are going on. There are opportunities to engage with characters that live and breathe in that world, but you're not like the general running the war in charge of winning the day and saving the world. You just are a person existing in this larger living world who is going on their own adventure with their own goals and their own trajectory that just happens to be taking place in a larger world. And that's kind of what we're trying to establish with Spiritfire. Is you go into these realms, and you can engage as much as you like with the different stories and things that are going on, and you'll start unraveling mysteries and learning things about the things that are happening. And the more each realm kind of has its own little mechanical construct where maybe there are a couple different factions, and as you're currying favor with one, the other doesn't like you as much, and now you gain access to new quests and activities that pertain to that one. Whenever you want, you can just leave that realm and go to another realm, and that realm behaves very differently. In that realm, there are no factions. Instead, there are like 3 mountains, and that you're trying to scale, and they're of different difficulties, and different things happen in the mountains. And so as you're going between these different realms, you are pursuing quests and increasing your capacity as a character to do things. A lot of it is card based. Everyone designing the game is an old school Magic nerd, and part of what we're trying to do with this is make basically single player Magic. And the idea being, here's this difficult quest. My goal is now to construct a character between my deck and my equipment and these various other things, my pet and what my pet can do. I need to now build a character. Basically, I need to construct a deck/character that is able to complete this quest. And then when I do complete that quest, I get to open a foil pack. And then that gives me new gear, and maybe it changes what's happening with the map, and it brings out new people to talk to. And we use this example all the time of there may be a quest to save the druids, find the druids, where are the druids? And so you have to solve all these mysteries to figure out where the druids are. And then once you've saved the druids, you open this pack, and now the druids exist in the world, and they each have a new quest, and you can talk to them, and maybe they give you some things. And so over the course of the game, the ultimate trajectory of the game is you're just playing this character's life, like from when they leave, the starting village to when their life forces run out and they're done. And the question of the game is not, how efficiently did you get everything done? How quickly did you beat the game? The question is more along the lines of like, how much were you able to do in your life
with the time you had?
Yeah. It's very Gandalf. And cool. So what we're trying to do is slow down the way you think about these things and look at it from a slightly different angle. And we want one of the quests to be we want you to do things like, you're just going to go meditate on this mountain. That's this quest that you're doing right now. And that extends, your spark, your life force, and how long this character is going to exist in the world. And, so it's hard to describe without visuals. But hopefully you get kind of a vague idea of the type of stuff we're doing.
There's aspects of this that feel very open world, like a Skyrim. And then there's aspects of it that feel like character development. And when you roll up a character in D&D, and then there's aspects of it that feel like you can go gathering and crafting like you would in World of Warcraft. And then there's deck building aspects like you'd have in Magic. And it kind of all is go at your own pace, slow, steady, do what you want, build your character and your life the way that you want all the time. And the richness of that and the amount of little micro leveling and cool things that you can do, this game is very rich, and it's got a lot of nuance to it.
And there's no combat whatsoever.
And no combat.
So
cool.
That's not to say that there isn't conflict and things that you need to overcome.
It's filled with conflict.
Yeah. So there's lots of tension and hard things to do, but we have set a challenge for ourselves that you'd never solve any of those things by hitting them.
Yeah, it's not armor and weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a first huge constraint that we put on ourselves is let's do this without combat. Not because, we're overly altruistic. It's more, let's challenge ourselves to like, how else do you overcome things in the world? Is it always just pulling out the biggest sword and my shield is +2 and yours is +1? Or can we use nuanced things like our mindset and disciplines and, things that other types of things that you can tap into to make the game really nuanced and deep.
And it has been a really interesting challenge. Like, because it's not like we're opposed to, like I'm playing Elden Ring right now. I think it's awesome. Mark plays World of Warcraft. Like we're steeped in games and, combat is fun. But one of the things we found early on was we were trying to challenge ourselves to avoid combat as like the only thing you can do to resolve a problem. And our instinct was just to keep doing it, and it's like we reference equipment and we're like just always referencing combat-based equipment. And all of our quest examples that we would just rattle off when we were at the whiteboard were all combat-based. And then finally we were like, you know what? Like, let's just do this whole stinking thing with no combat. Like, is that possible? Because we've never played that game. Like, maybe we need to be the ones to make it. If nothing else, it's a very, very cool thing to say to the world.
So incredible.
Yeah.
I can feel our Discord flooding with comments now. This is
or unsubscribes.
or unsubs, yeah.
Well, so two things. Number one, the game sounds amazing. It does sound like a lot of fun. It does sound like something I would be interested in. And then number two, I would have to agree with you. Out in the real world, they do frown on it when you pull your sword out in the Walmart parking lot.
No one's ever been happy with me when I've resolved something with violence.
It doesn't go well. Doesn't go well.
Or fire. That also people don't like when I do that. So
yeah, it's also frowned upon.
Set. Yeah.
One Molotov cocktail and they all get antsy.
No, and everyone gets all bothered.
All right, guys, it's time for a couple silly questions. So here's mine. If you have to pick one movie to live inside of for the rest of your life, what movie would you pick and why?
Live inside of.
Oh, man.
That you have to be a part of. You have to interact. You have to live there.
My Neighbor Totoro. I'm just going to live in a beautiful Japanese forest with and just be at peace forever.
Deal. Done. Okay.
Does it have to be a movie or can it be a show?
Sure.
Sure, you could be a show.
This is maybe partially a cop out, but I love the old Star Trek where they just go to a new planet, new environment every time, and it felt very refreshing. Just one episode kind of encased itself by the end of the 55 minutes, and you're on to the next one. And so there's a sense of, unfamiliar that you would have week to week. So that would be kind of probably where I'd lose myself.
Sounds good. Enjoying the amnesia between episodes that last week never happened, and this week is a new issue.
You never learn anything from the stuff that happens to
There's
you.
no logic in my movie.
Is that why Harry Kim never got a promotion?
Right?
Probably. They kept forgetting.
So, my silly question. Luna and Ronak have gone through a wormhole. They arrive at the same location. What sci-fi or fantasy realm would you like to see them in, teamed up to either cause mayhem or to save the day?
I think they arrive at Sesame Street.
I was going to say Fantasia.
Okay, well, I'm okay with either of these answers. This is working out. At what point during Fantasia, though?
Oh man.
Like, is it the bit with the brooms, or is it just like some psychedelic piece? Or
It'd be easier to handle the psychedelic piece, but I don't
it's
I don't
just
know if Luna would be into
Ronak
that.
fever dream?
Exactly. What was the one that you said?
I said Sesame Street.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm envisioning
Yeah.
that right now and I'm speechless.
whether they're doing something like helpful and there's counting going on, or there's just some like inappropriate carnage, it's all entertaining, which is what we're after.
Oh no. Where's Krista when we need her?
She's typing things into Slack right now, I'm
I
sure.
know exactly.
We have a Slack channel called Overheard, and yeah,
No, she's sending something to Indeed, I think.
yeah, she's on Glassdoor. Yeah, and Krista's just our office stenographer. So we have 5 years of just terrible things recorded in
And our
Slack now.
illustrator. Yeah.
Yeah, she's
You got to
She's
bring
many
those
things.
back to the Facebook page.
we're working on it.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, that was something that Teresa used to do, and then Teresa went and got a real job, and then the rest of us forgot we were supposed to be doing that, but we remembered. So
There is
Okay.
that. Yeah. We'll get right on that.
yeah, but we
I
have
like-
like a couple thousand backlogs, so we just need someone to get in Photoshop and build them.
I like those overheard at
That's good to hear. They're
segments.
good push. They're coming.
We have a million of them.
Mhm.
Excellent. All right, guys, we're at a stage in our show where we like to take our guests through a quiz.
Okay.
So because there's two of you, we will wait until we hear final answer. Okay, so you guys can talk about it, all that kind of stuff. But there are 4 questions. Each of the questions are multiple choice. Now, we have entitled this quiz "The One About Games and Stuff." So, out of those 4 questions, if you get 3 of the 4 questions correct, we'd like to send you each a copy of this book called Custodians of the Cosmos, which was written by our group founder and our show founder originally, Drayton Allen, Nick's dad. And it's all about a young man who wanted to join something quite like Starfleet, but not Starfleet for litigious reasons. And although he washed out, he did rejoin as a custodian so he could boldly clean up after those who had boldly just went.
That's brilliant. Is his name really Drayton?
It's his pen
That's his,
name.
that's his pen name.
I was gonna say that's if you were born with that name, you have
I
no
know.
choice but
That's
to
right.
write that book. You're like, oh, I guess this is what I do. Like,
That or fight for the crown of Belgium. You pick one of the two, but yeah,
yeah. I know what I'd pick.
there you go. So if you get 3 of the 4 questions correct, we'll send you the book. If you get 2 or less questions correct, we take your picture, we make a meme out of you, and we put you into our 200,000 plus member Facebook group. We call it our fun sequence.
That's fair.
I like it.
I see us there already.
All right, so these are random questions about things and games. Stuff.
Okay. And stuff.
The word orange rhymes with which of these actual words? Lorange, sporange, or florange?
What is happening right now?
All right, one more time.
The
As if it
question-
makes a difference. But I want to hear you read that. I'm making you. You have no. This is my
Give us
punishment.
the alternate.
You get to
yeah.
read them again.
I gotta remember how I pronounced them. Blorange, sporange, or florange.
So
Florange.
blorange, sporange, or florange.
Is there a D? None of the above. We have to get it right,
My-
Tom.
I mean, my instinct is towards florange for reasons that don't exist.
I agree to your terms.
Okay, the last one, the third one, florange.
Final answer.
Final.
Okay, incorrect. The answer could have been either A or B. Those are actually
for
both
heaven's
words.
sake. That's
So
We're not too
blorange is
bright.
actually mountains in Wales, and sporange is a technical term for where sack of spores are made, according to the Googles.
I feel like
We
previous
disagree.
research
That's Winora is where those
Yeah.
spores are made.
All right, question 2.
Sorry, everyone in
Candyland.
Wales.
Sorry, they'll get over it. All right. So number 2, Candyland was created in 1935 to help kids get through the Great Depression. In 1949 to help quarantine kids who had polio. Or in 1945 to help kids celebrate the end of World War II and look better at the future.
I think we're headed to the wall of
I
shame.
know.
I like how I said the second I start asking the question, Mark's head was shot straight down.
Well, you're in good company. Like we've had Dan Povenmire,
And
who
a few
else?
others.
Yeah.
That's my instinct is A.
You want me to read them to you one
I
more
was hoping
time?
She was going to help us cheat, but she just walked past.
It's like you're on your own, scrubs.
Everyone here's in trouble with me. Someone should be holding up Google right now.
You want a
Would you like me to read
50-50?
I'll read them to you one more time.
Yeah, one more time.
All right. So Candyland, was it created in 1935 to help kids get through the Great Depression? B, 1949 to help quarantine kids who had polio? Or in 1945 to help kids celebrate the end of World War II and look better towards the future?
Yeah, I have no strong instinct. I was waiting to get one, but I didn't. So if you had any instinct at all, let's go with it.
Well, the market crashed in 29. 35 is 6 years later,
Mm-hmm.
but that's right in the thick of it. Seems like it would take time to produce. So it was produced in 35.
And we were all isolationists at that point.
Although
Candyland has that
1940
vibe.
The 1945 one seems. It seems like the dark horse winner for me. Like that one's like out of World War II, look brighter for the future. I don't know. I'm torn between those two. It's not the second one.
Do you want a 50-50?
Between three
Is
answers.
this like phone a friend or
Yeah, would
How do
you
you get
cut
a
those
Do you want a
three answers in half?
33?
Give us a 33. Yeah, please.
It's not
either-
World War II.
It is not World War II yet.
it's got to be the first one then, I think.
All right, we'll
It's
take
not
the Great
polio.
Depression one.
It can't be polio. Polio in 49.
You just keep saying that so that they can embarrass
in
us.
49? No.
All right, Great Depression one.
Final answer?
It was polio.
It was polio.
I hate us.
I'm channeling all this anger towards polio.
We can make these really complex games that go all over the world, but we can't answer basic questions about games.
It's because we're too busy making games.
You're too
Then
busy making them instead of studying the history.
We should be studying Candyland. That's obvious. Like, where does Candyland sit in the cultural zeitgeist of sad history?
right there in polio.
All All right, keep going. We want all four. We
All
want to
right.
go 0 for 0. All right, this is our new
That's
goal.
right.
The game of life was
0 for 4.
invented in 1860. A spinner was used instead of dice because it's easier to manufacture, or more difficult to lose, or dice suggested gambling.
What year? 1860.
1860.
How precious were people going to be about gambling at that point? Did we have any sort of
1860.
morality about gambling yet?
That's my instinct too. I don't think it has to do with losing the dice, but
Probably does.
I definitely don't think it's the first one. Manufacturing dice is probably easier. Yeah, I'm with you.
You think it was about gambling?
Why do we even think about these? We're 0 for everything. Why are we even thinking? We should just choose.
Because doing a bunch of thinking that then goes nowhere is like our job.
Please buy our games.
Please buy our games.
Okay, yeah, gambling.
You are correct.
Yes. Too
Yeah.
bad.
We
Yeah,
crushed
they
that
I was
already, that
almost
one.
like looking forward to being 0 for 4.
You know, the interesting part is in doing the research for that, they actually in the original game, you could like lead a life of crime, you could go to jail, you could do all these different things, but they were afraid that the dice were going to entice people to gamble. Like, okay, whatever.
Interesting.
So
I mean,
weird morality in the 1860s.
We have a long and proud history of getting all tussled up about one thing and ignoring another. That's
Well, you're not wrong.
Straight facts.
All right. All right. Final question. In 2003, what ailment was added to Cavity Sam in the game of Operation?
oh gosh.
Did he receive a ruptured spleen, brain freeze, or tennis elbow?
2003.
I have a clue if you want it.
Sure.
The answer is very millennial.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, my instinct was towards brain freeze just because that was a very Slurpees 90s issue.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And it just seems like something you'd put in that game.
mhm.
What was there was
Like
tennis
ruptured
elbow and-
spleen, which is way too like
Yeah, I agree. And
Like, why would you
tennis
randomly add
elbow?
that?
Like people don't even know what that is anymore. I don't know. Yeah, brain freeze.
we're gonna go with brain freeze.
You are correct.
All right. 2 for 2. All right. So, need you guys to smile pretty for the camera. 1, 2, 3. All right. Took a screenshot. We'll use that. We'll make some nice.
Shame is real.
We're idiots.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
You're in good company.
I mean, it's kind of like promotion because we'll probably mention, Orange Nebula. So
Maybe once
Proverbial no bad
it-
press.
somewhere.
Yeah.
it'll be in good taste and we'll share it with you.
These
And
guys
some-
know nothing
yeah.
about orange.
I put on there as a joke Poranges at one point because that TV show back in, what was it, 70s, 80s? HR Puffin stuff.
No, he was puffing stuff. So, all right, guys, stick around after we say goodbye to everybody else. We'll get your shipping information and we'll make sure you guys get. We're gonna send you the books anyway, just for fun,
Oh, thank
And,
you.
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome.
and we'll make sure that we have some fun pictures made for you.
Can we
It'll be good
read?
times.
Is that, do we have to learn how to read first?
We'll have someone
Well,
read it to us.
Well,
All right.
was it Teresa that does all the 17 other jobs? Here's number 18. She can read you the books. So,
Fair.
Sounds
That's
good.
fair.
Well, Tom and Mark, thank you so much for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go to find out more about you and what your companies and about your company?
Our stuff and things.
Yes.
Well,
your
we're
stuff
on
and
pretty
things.
much everything is at Orange Nebula. Orange like the color, Nebula like the thing in space. We have a Discord channel that is fairly active that you can reach through orangenebula.com/Discord. We have Facebook groups that we're very active in. Those are our main spaces.
And we're on Instagram and Twitter too, but not quite as active as we will be in the future.
Yeah.
If you join Discord, you get some fun Luna emojis.
I thought you said
It's true.
Luna meat, and I was like, hold on.
Yeah, that's
We've
a whole
never
nother-
promised Luna meat.
Sounds like
I think he
Kelly
did say that. I think it
I
caught all
did.
of us off guard. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, we do have emojis on there.
Yes,
on
our Discord does have Luna emojis, and we're about to leave Facebook in protest for them not allowing Luna emojis. So that was the last straw for us with Facebook.
right.
was
all the other
emojis.
issues be damned, but I didn't get
Yeah.
an emoji.
But the emojis is what really matters. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thanks. We'll make sure we put some links in our show description so that our listeners can check them out.
All right. And guys, we want to remind you guys that subscribing is the single most important thing that you can do to help our show continue to grow, get amazing guests like Tom and Mark here to come and participate in the insanity that is the FSF PopCast. But we want to make sure that you also go and check out their stuff. They do have a podcast that you need to check out. And guys, tell them again, what's the name of the podcast?
It's called the Outpost podcast. And there's a couple of them in there, but you'll see the one with the kind of the weird sci-fi icon on it. And we've got about 50 or so episodes on there right now and about 50 in the queue.
Perfect. Yeah, so go check out the Outpost, and you can check out their games, everything from orangenebula.com. Now, for whatever reason, if you're not happy with the content of our show today, please feel free to lodge a complaint with the head of our complaint department, Luna. You're not getting any meat from her, no matter what Nick says. But don't let this lovable, huggable robot fool you. Luna will turn this ship around in an instant and set us back down on Kalophos, where the offending party will be fed to the bloodsuckers. And with every bite, the offending party's hysterical terrors will manifest within their minds until they cannot endure it anymore. So maybe just complain about Nick. Okay? Just Nick.
You know, that is the one planet I am yet to survive, and I fear to go back, but I must.
You can do it. You can survive the bloodsucker noggins. We believe in you.
Well, thanks again, Tom and Mark.
Luna doesn't, but you know.
Luna doesn't. No. Luna says you're screwed. But all right. Hey, thanks guys so much for coming onto the show. This was a lot of fun.
It was our absolute pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. That's it for the FSF Podcast. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
See you guys. Thank you.
On behalf of the rest of the hosts of the FSF Podcast, we want to thank you for listening to this episode. If you'd like to be a guest on a future episode, please contact us by means of Twitter or Instagram using the handle @FSF PopCast, or go to www.fsfpopcast.com and click on the Contact Me link. Thanks again, and hope you enjoyed the episode.